So we're midway through spring. Who are Tennessee football starters as of right now? If Tennessee played tomorrow, who would start at what position? I'll tell you that and more. It's your Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vols. We're a part of Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. I'm your host, Cain. Appreciate you for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. You can watch us, follow us, listen, subscribe, all that for free wherever you get your podcast. Got a fun show coming up today. We're going to predict Tennessee's starting lineup. About 2.5 weeks into spring practice. If Tennessee were to play tomorrow, who would start where? That's coming up in a matter of seconds. Chris Brazzell, Tennessee transfer wide receiver, joined Locked On SEC on Tuesday. Had a really lengthy, good interview. I'm going to play part of that clip here from Chris Gordy's show. And that's coming up in segment number 2. And then in segment number 3, we'll catch up with Josh Ward for our Ward Wednesday segment. All that and more. That's coming up next as we continue on with this edition of Locked On Vols. So again, I thought I would take this time here today, about a week and a half left of spring practice. We're over the halfway hump. And kind of predict who Tennessee's starting lineup would be if Tennessee was squaring off against Oklahoma or UTC or whoever the case may be this time tomorrow, right? And some of these will not be surprises, and some of these are still question marks, but I'll kind of give you those starters and kind of pretty much the two deep, if you will, and kind of show you what these positions look like right now. So again, a lot of this is not a finished product, but here's kind of where we are, in my opinion, right now. Well, it's pretty much easy. If we start on the offensive side of the football, Nico Iamaleava is your quarterback. Obviously, I think Gaston Moore is your second-string quarterback for now, and then Jake Merklinger would be at number 3. At running back, I think Dylan Sampson's your 1A and Cam Seldon's your 1B. However, Cam Seldon's out with injury right now. And this last week and a half, as we kind of mentioned on the show yesterday in the mailbag portion, Deshaun Bishop, Khalifa Keith will have every opportunity, 2 more spring scrimmages left, one Thursday night and then the orange and white game, to prove that they could be a viable option. And so Tennessee does not have to go to the transfer portal. Remember, freshman running back, early enrollee, Peyton Lewis, is already out this spring. He's not participating. So in the fall, I do believe it'll be a Dylan Sampson, Cam Seldon, and Peyton Lewis will be in that conversation. However, that's not where you're at right now. So for right now, I will say it's Dylan Sampson, and then I will say it's Deshaun Bishop. But again, we're not technically playing tomorrow. You're going to be playing in September. So a big question mark still looms there at running back behind Dylan Sampson, and that's what's going to be really critical throughout the rest of spring practice. Moving on to the tight end position. It's pretty much chalk here, in my opinion. Tennessee plays 2 tight ends. Ethan Davis has continued to come on. He's had a nice little spring, and I think Holden Stays has adjusted and kind of engulfed himself in the offense pretty well. Those 2 guys will play a ton. I think Miles Kitzelman from Alabama, the guy that was kind of a throw-in, really just a body, I think he's had a really nice spring. His physicality is what's made him stand out compared to the other 2. And so, if anything, I think Tennessee feels much better about the room than they did entering spring, because I don't think they knew anything that they could count on with Miles Kitzelman. But I think he's proved a lot here this spring. So I think the tight end position has been a pleasant surprise this spring. I'll kind of keep it at that. Wide receivers. If Tennessee played tomorrow, I think it would be, and again, I guess if they played tomorrow, then Brew McCoy wouldn't be out there because he's still injured. Now, he'll be out there game number 1. Brew McCoy's wide receiver number 1. Let's not forget that. But if they played tomorrow, I think it'll be Dante Thornton on one side. I think it would be Squirrel White in the slot. And I think it would be Chris Brazzell on the other side, which means this wide receiver battle of Thornton, Brazzell, Nimrod, Webb, Mike Matthews, the freshman, is going to continue on into fall camp to see who starts on the outside opposite of Brew McCoy. Because Brew McCoy is the alpha in the room. He's going to play. Now, my question still remains is, if you like all these options, why not play a deeper rotation? And maybe Tennessee will, but Tennessee really hasn't done that unless due to injury, like you saw last season. So I think Thornton's had a really good spring. I think Brazzell's come along. I think Mike Matthews has had a good spring, and Braylon Staley would be the backup to Squirrel White in the slot, and he's had a good spring as well. The wide receiver room has had a really solid spring for sure. On the offensive line, we will go left tackle Lance Hurd. Left guard, if they played tomorrow, would be Dane Davis. Center would be Cooper Mays. Right guard would be, well, if they played tomorrow, Javonte Spraggins wouldn't be healthy enough, so I'd say Jackson Lampley, but that's where Javonte Spraggins will start. And then at right tackle will be John Campbell. Dane Davis is your swing guy. I still think Tennessee would like for Sham Umarov to progress and to take over that left guard spot, and we'll see kind of where Tennessee is in that regard. But if they played tomorrow, it would be left to right, Lance Hurd, Dane Davis, Cooper Mays, Jackson Lampley, and then John Campbell. You like your opening 5 or 6, if you will. But I think Tennessee still would like to create a lot of depth, and Tennessee would still like to find another option for left guard. Much like running back, still very much a theme the last week and a half of spring practice and on into fall camp. So that's the offense. Now let's take a look at the defense. And remember, there are some guys who are injured now who will be back and will be a part of things in fall camp and in the season. But if Tennessee were playing tomorrow, here's how I would line them up. Starting on the defensive line, I mean, we know Rodney Garner's going to play 12 to 14 guys. We know that's a big reason why they are so fresh and so dominant. We know this is a veteran group. There's been a lot of hype. So this is really more of a depth chart defensive line because all these guys are going to see action. We'll start at Leo. James Pierce Jr., one of the best in the country. He's going to lead the way. Joshua Joseph's going to get some snaps, and Caleb Herring should get some snaps as well. In pass rushing situations, a couple of those guys will be on the field at the same time. So that's kind of where I have them. And Jordan Ross, when he gets on campus, he's not here yet. Maybe he can develop into a small role there, but he would be the fourth option at Leo next year. Moving on now to the other side, the strong side defensive end, and that's where Tyler Barron was. He's obviously no longer here. Dominic Bailey will lead that conversation. Tyree West will be at that position. Tyree Weathersby, who missed all of last year but had a strong camp before getting injured and is having a really, really good spring. He'll play that position. Jason Jenkins, who's been a guy that's played a little bit but has not been a name. He's going to start developing into more of a name this year. He can play at that spot. And again, much like the Leos, in pass rushing situations, some of those guys will bump inside, play the DTs, and get after the passer. So again, it sounds wild to say all these guys are going to play, but that's just kind of how Rodney Gardner does it. But I think there's a lot to like about Tyree West and Tyree Weathersby. I think those guys are going to be players for sure. Let's bump inside. Defensive tackles. 2 of them will play at a time. They'll be led by Amari Thomas, Omar Norman-Lott, Bryson Eason, David Hobbs, Elijah Simmons. Jason Jenkins can bump down. Jackson Moy, the transfer from Stanford. Again, all those guys I've mentioned, and I haven't even talked about Nathan Robinson or maybe some freshmen coming up. It's wild how deep this group is and how good they're going to be, in my opinion. Go to linebacker. We know that the starting linebackers, the 2 starting inside backers, will be Keenan Peely. And then in this fall will probably be Arian Carter, in my opinion. Arian Carter's not going full go this spring. Neither is Elijah Herring due to some cleanup surgeries. But I think Arian Carter is going to take that step and really be a dude next year. I would say in the fall, the starters are Keenan Peely and Arian Carter. If they played tomorrow, the starters would be Keenan Peely and, in my opinion, Jeremiah Thielander. Jeremiah Thielander is having a really, really good fall or spring. I think him and William Inge have really hit it off. And so when you look at the linebacker position and kind of how deep it is now, you can almost go 6 deep. Keenan Peely, Arian Carter, Elijah Herring, Jeremiah Thielander. You've got Edwin Spillman. You've got Caleb Perry. You've got Jordan Burns. It is a deeper group, and I think it's going to be a pretty solid group next year. But if they play tomorrow, Keenan Peely, Jeremiah Thielander. Let's go to safety. I think it's going to be Andre Turrentine, Jacoby Thomas, John Slaughter is kind of that first backup. At cornerback, I think your top 2 are Ricky Gibson, Jermon McCoy. Your backups, Jalen McMurray. Excuse me. And then I think the fourth and fifth guys are kind of bracketed, and that's Christian Conyer and Jordan Matthews. Cornerback, again, is a position to where you want to have some finality. You want to have some competition and some questions answered by the end of spring practice. It'll carry over into fall as well. But I do think one thing that's been kind of a theme this week so far, and I mentioned it yesterday, Jalen McMurray, Temple transfer, has really caught everybody's eye. I think he's been really, really good. And so that's good to hear. That's kind of where Tennessee is at cornerback. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Things can change. Again, it is just it's April the 3rd, but that's kind of where I am right now in terms of predicting the starters for Tennessee in the fall and if they were to play a game tomorrow. And we'll kind of update that, obviously, over the summer. 2 scrimmages left. They'll scrimmage on Thursday night at Neyland Stadium, and they'll scrimmage, of course, in the orange and white game coming up next weekend. Hey, when we come back, we'll take a listen and we'll watch what Chris Brazzell had to say to Josh Gordy on Locked On SEC's episode on Tuesday. That is coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. I want to tell you about our friends over at Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV, it's your destination for sports, from live game to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as Fire TV Stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, college basketball tournament, you're going to want to watch Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date with all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and more. Not even to mention entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on the Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, check it out at www.amazon.com/lockedon Fire TV. More to come on Locked On Vols. It's coming up next. All right, so Chris Gordy, host of Locked On SEC, does an awesome job. He had Tennessee transfer wide receiver Chris Brazzell on his show on Tuesday. A lot of good stuff. The interview was about 15 minutes long, so a lot of things to pick and choose from there. I have about a 3-minute clip that I want to play, some of the highlights, and I encourage you to go check out the complete interview over at Locked On SEC. But in this interview that you're about to hear and see here, if you're watching on YouTube, Chris asked him about why he came to Tennessee, why he picked Tennessee, on playing with quarterback Nico Iamaleava, on developing the chemistry with Nico, on playing for Josh Heupel and Kelsey Pope, on playing quarterback as a younger football player, his dad being a star football player, and the scout on himself as a wide receiver. That's the stuff that you're going to hear right now as I play a highlight clip of Chris Brazzell from Locked On SEC.
Well, my coaches ended up leaving, Coach Fritz, and most of that coaching staff from Tulane ended up going to Houston. So once that happened, it was really a toss-up if I wanted to stay and be at Tulane, and that was going to be the unknown, or transfer someone else on a bigger platform and let that be the unknown. So ended up hitting the portal. Coach Pope came to see me. He talked to me about the offense. I loved everything he said. Air raid offense. Nico at the quarterback. Coach Hype being Coach Hype. I mean, it was an easy decision for me. No, it wasn't an instant type of thing. It was more like just the offense, man. Like, we got a lot of option routes from the outside spot. That wasn't something we had at Tulane. The option routes, the wide splits, the run and gun offense, the tempo, just run and gun. I think that's every receiver dream, really, being able to play in a run and gun offense. So, I mean, a high caliber quarterback like Nico, it was an easy decision. The kid's a gamer. You talk about the Iowa game, first game playing against a team like that, going off, dominating. I mean, that's something special. That tells you a lot about the kid. And throughout spring, he's a young leader. I mean, he's dynamic, throw the ball, run the ball, act like he's gonna run it, throw it. I mean, the kid's a gamer. Yeah, spring ball and fall camps definitely important. Gaining trust and chemistry with your quarterback. On my end, I got to make the plays for him to gain that confidence with him. So it's just all about each day just going out there making plays and having him trust me, knowing I'm gonna be in the right spot and just gaining that trust. Yeah, with a history like that, and that being your head coach, I mean, who wouldn't want to play for a guy like that? So, I mean, he's cool, encouraging. I like Coach Hype. Yeah, facts. I mean, Jaden Hyatt coached him, award winner. He got a track record of just elite guys and developing them and making them better. So, 2022 that happened. Him and Jaden Hyatt, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, so that was 2 years ago, a year ago, really. So I mean, that was definitely a big factor in that. I started playing quarterback at first. I was a quarterback my whole life. Seventh grade year, decided to switch. I knew I was gonna switch eventually, but everybody starts off playing the opposite position. So growing up, having my dad in my ear and having NFL training definitely got me where I am now. He is the reason why I'm here where I am now for sure. Uh, like I think I'm pretty fast, man. I got real good speed. I can get on my brakes quick. I can run little guy routes. I can run a slant, get up on a slant, run a stop. I mean, and then on top of that, I can take the top off the defense. So I think I'm just a good mixture of a good receiver. Yeah, that's how I kind of try to difference myself by being able to play the slot and run those type of routes, being able to run the comeback and the trace, not just being a goal guy, a post guy, able to run any route in the playbook. Yeah, we're all better in ourselves right now during spring. Everybody going out there competing. And then I feel like in the game, when you got 6, 7 dogs on the field, I mean, it's going to be hard to stop that.
A lot of good stuff there from Chris Brazzell on his appearance of Locked On SEC. And that last little bit, he was talking about the competition at wide receiver for Tennessee, all the different options from Dante Thornton. Obviously, Brew's not active right now, but, Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, Mike Matthews, himself, and then, of course, Staley, Squirrel in the slot. A lot of good stuff there. And again, that was just a portion of about the 15-minute interview. He also goes on to talk about his time at Tulane, his background in recruiting, Mike Matthews specifically, Tennessee freshman wide receiver, the number that he wants, jersey number that is, more about transferring to Tennessee and other transfers who are at Tennessee right now, including Lance Hurd, transferring to the SEC, hobbies away from football, all that and more. Really good conversation. Go check it out with Chris Gordy and Locked On SEC. That was on Tuesday's episode with Tennessee wide receiver Chris Brazzell. All right, when we come back, we'll check in with our buddy Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday to conclude a Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. All right, the sports calendar, it is loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on all that action. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $200 you can use to bet on the tournament. Major League Baseball, which is happening right now, NBA, NHL, and so much more. All you need to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet a big win. Major League Baseball is back. So much fun, so many different opportunities to where you can put some coin in your pocket, run line, money line, all that and more. Individual prop bets you can do over with Major League Baseball back. And, of course, you guys know that I love to bet on NASCAR. And the prop bets in NASCAR, you get some of the best value in all of sports gambling. So check it all out at FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Josh Ward coming up next. Ward Wednesday on Locked On Vols. All right, as we do each and every Wednesday, we're going to conclude Locked On Vols with a little Ward Wednesday. Josh Ward, 99.1 The Sports Animal, co-host of Josh and Swain with VFL Jason Swain. Josh, a lot going on right now. Let's start at the top. It's unfortunate Tennessee's run in the NCAA Tournament is done, but man, this team was fun to watch. It was a good game against Purdue, but ultimately, just no answer for Zach Edey.
Yeah, no answer for Zach Edey and not enough offense overall. Dalton Connect was tremendous in what he was able to do. He tried to hit a few more shots late, and they didn't go down. And in the end, that was the difference, as it was a close ball game with a few minutes to go. But the season was spectacular. It's the greatest season in Tennessee basketball history, in my opinion, when you consider the run to the Elite Eight, only the second time in school history, an outright regular season SEC title, which has not happened often, and the individual accolades and performances that will be celebrated forever. The season had everything that Tennessee fans could have asked for. They wanted more. The team had goals of getting to the Final Four and winning a national championship, and I truly think Tennessee was capable of that. They just came up short, but it's a season that should be celebrated forever.
Where do you stand on the whole officiating, Zach Edey? It's always Purdue. Somebody brought that up on yesterday's show. It's like, why is it always Purdue? I'm like, well, a lot of times it's whoever Tennessee's playing, but it does seem like it's Purdue more than not. I kind of went on a spill on Monday's show. Where are you at on this? 7'4", 300 pounds, called for one foul, camped out in the lane for 38 minutes of the 40-minute ball game. How can you win when that's allowed, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, first of all, the Purdue point, I'm with everybody else who notices that it's just every time with Purdue, it seems like there is some kind of controversy to go with the frustration of the result, because I don't think fans are talking about the officiating as much with the win, but twice this season in basketball, the Sweet 16 game a few years ago with Carson Edwards play, the Music City Bowl.
Yep.
We talked about that on Josh and Swain. Man, it's crazy how many games have had officiating be a part of the conversation. I am of the opinion that Zach Edey is very hard to officiate because there aren't players like him. The game is so different. There are big men, but they're not as big of a force as he is. I would be lying if I said that I've gone back and I've individually looked at each play for when 3 seconds should have been called, should not have been called. I also would be lying if I said I remembered a 3-second violation being called this season.
So I would agree with that.
I haven't really been on 3-second watch, and I don't think that officials are either. They have conversations about what is emphasized. I don't think 3 seconds is in that conversation very often. I also think if we went through each possession for both teams, Tennessee and Purdue, I'm not exaggerating here. I bet we could find 100 fouls that occurred by both teams, by Purdue, by Tennessee. Zach Edey definitely committed more than one foul in the game. Tobe Awaka committed more than 5 fouls. Once he hit 5, he couldn't commit any more beyond that.
This is true.
He committed more than 5 in the game. He was only called for 5 of them. So I don't have anything to offer Tennessee fans to make them feel better. Fans are frustrated and should be. And watching that game and knowing that the whistle was coming, there's nothing you can do about it. I don't have anything good to tell fans to make them feel better. So the frustration is just, it's going to be there. I think Zach Edey is a terrific player. I do think that he gets too much criticism, or what he's done to become the player that he is overlooked because of the conversation of the officiating, which is not his fault either. He takes advantage of it. So I think he's a wonderful player. I think those were probably the 2 best players in the country individually on the floor against one another on Sunday, and they both put up all-time performances, talking about Edey and Dalton Connect. So if you're still upset, frustrated, angry about the officiating, I got you. I understand, and I don't think that's going to go away.
Are you saying that you could call holding on every play in football, and honestly,
in that
defensive
game,
pass interference?
It was literally that. Literally hands holding on both ends. I mean, again, Purdue should have been called for more fouls. Zach Edey, like the jump ball on the floor where he goes over Josiah. Yeah, I thought that should have been a foul. Yeah, the funny thing is the elbow of Awaka before the block, like that possession where ultimately Josiah was called for a foul and he did hit Edey on the arm. But that possession, if you go back and watch it, there were at least 5, maybe 6 fouls that were committed on that play that could have been called before Josiah hit Edey at the rim from both teams. So that's what I'm talking about. There were so many. So part of it is picking and choosing when to call the fouls, which is just going to lead to frustrating results for anybody watching the game.
So you mentioned, and I'm in agreement with you, that this is the best team in Tennessee history. It's up for debate on, if this team would beat this team or this team would beat that team, but it's the most accomplished. We've had this conversation before, but now that it's officially over, how will Dalton Connect be remembered as a Tennessee Vol? One season, it was fun. Mm-hmm. He's going to finish, second to 7'4", 300-pounder Zach Edey for National Player of the Year, but I agree with you. Those are the 2 best players in the country. How will he be remembered by Tennessee fans moving forward?
I think he will be remembered as a Tennessee basketball legend because what he did in the regular season put him in that conversation, but it still left the question of, well, what can this team do in the postseason? And that's been a conversation we've been having for a few years. Okay, well, let's see what they do in March. I think that's been the one holdup for fans about getting excited in the months of December, January, and February was the fear of disappointment in the postseason. But we know the result now. Dalton Knecht had an all-time regular season. He was the SEC Player of the Year. He was a consensus first-team All-American. That is so difficult to pull off, and he did it, and then helped Tennessee get to the Elite Eight for only the second time in school history. And in the game that was so disappointing for Tennessee to lose against Purdue, and that's a result that stings, fans still saw him swinging as hard as he could to try to get Tennessee to the next round. I think that's something else fans want to see, is you want to see your team go down swinging and your best player, your star player, doing everything he can to get you beyond that point. And Dalton did that against Purdue. So Tennessee came up short, but fans will never think, man, if he could have done a little bit more. Yes, he could have made a couple of more shots, but no fan is saying Dalton should have given us more. Yeah. So he had an all-time season. The team had some all-time results. You put those two together, he's a legend in Tennessee basketball history.
Yeah, and towards the end of the second half, when Tennessee was trying to hunt down a shot and they were trying to get the ball to Dalton, and he was working so hard just to get the ball. But by the time he got the ball, shot clock was going down, and he was tired. I mean, again, I can't agree more. He emptied the tank, gave everything he had for Tennessee. Let's flip gears now. Big news on Monday afternoon. Not shocking news, but huge news nonetheless. Lady Vols are making a change at head coach. Danny White fires Kellie Harper. Whether you liked her, didn't like her, whatever, you hate to see somebody fired. You uproot their life, but I think the standard is not where it needs to be, and I think Danny White is trying to address that. Your thoughts on Kellie Harper being out now as the Lady Vols head coach?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it did not work out for Kellie Harper at Tennessee. She cares so much about Tennessee, not only Lady Vols basketball, but the university and all the sports. It's been well documented at this point, but for other sports, like a Tennessee football game, she is there cheering. She is as into it as a fan as anybody. She cares that much about Tennessee. She also came back to Tennessee to try to help the Lady Vols return to Final Fours and to compete for national championships. And in 5 seasons, that didn't happen, and I don't think there was any indication that it was about to happen. So if that's going to remain the goal, Danny White decided we have to find another coach that can get us there. And I think he's right in that choice. As disappointing as that result can be, that's the expectation. When fans of the Lady Vols or fans in general around college sports are tuning in on Monday night to watch Caitlin Clark's game for Iowa against LSU, and then following that, UConn against USC, the women's game is getting this big stage, and Tennessee is nowhere to be found. Tennessee is not a part of the conversation of what's happening on the court, and that has to be frustrating for Tennessee fans because rightfully they believe the Lady Vols belong in that conversation as a program, not necessarily this team, but the program belongs in that discussion. And I think that's true because the news of Kellie Harper being fired was the top headline Monday afternoon at ESPN.com. So that is a statement on how the program is still viewed, Tennessee women's basketball. So they've got to go find the right coach. Maybe that is a big name, proven coach. Maybe it's not. But Danny White is tasked with that. And this isn't a football hire. This isn't even a men's basketball hire, which are going to be judged more harshly probably. But it's a big deal to a lot of Tennessee fans and to a lot of people at that university. So it's an important hire for him to go get somebody. But he needs to spend if the right coach is available, and I think that he will. You need to invest in this because we can look around the country and see the value. The value goes beyond, okay, do you break even or are you making money when you're looking at revenue and profits? The value is beyond that, and I think Danny White recognizes that.
Well, either way, it's going to be a huge, sizable investment, if you will, because or financial commitment due to what you're paying her to go away. It's not something you see in football, but I mean, you are paying a sizable, bunch to fire her, to pay her buyout. And then if you're making this move, then you know that what's happening right now is not okay and it needs to be better. And so that leads me to believe he's going to go out and try to get a big fish, which will mean you got to pay some money. So we'll see what happens. Last thing out the door, Josh, about a week and a half left of spring football practice. What are you looking forward to the most and maybe trying to get answered over the course of the next 5 or 6 practices leading up to the orange and white game?
Yeah, I think it's, a lot of the position battle conversations we've had. So the next couple of days, what we hear about practice and then scrimmage activity is going to be a big deal leading up to what we're really looking for. Without knowing exactly who's going to be available in the orange and white game, you get out there and see who's held out. But I mean, it's a lot of the same positions we've talked about, but because of how intense the competition is, the wide receiver battle on the outside, I think, is a fascinating conversation. The depth that they can build and the guys that they can count on in the secondary, when you have a player like Boo Carter come in and create excitement for what he might be able to do with some other players coming back who have played some but are also going for a full-time starting position for the first time, that's a big deal. So that, and then the battle on the line of scrimmage. Tennessee's offensive line is not at full strength for what it will be this fall, but left guard's a big deal. And then how good this defensive line can be. So that's a lot to go along with Nico. Nico is the obvious storyline to me of the offseason and when we talk about the ceiling of this Tennessee football team, but it's everything around him for what this team can become.
Josh Ward, co-host of Josh and Swain on 99.1 The Sports Animal, noon to 3 weekdays. What's coming up the rest of the week on the show and in the newsletter Friday morning that you can subscribe to in the show notes of this show?
Yeah, that's free once a week, so I appreciate you pushing that out there, joshandswain.com, to go online and subscribe, or in that link in this show's description. We'll continue to talk about spring practice and the scrimmage. So Jason Swain's thoughts on what this team is doing and what it can become through the rest of the offseason is worth checking out. And then a plug from earlier in the week, the sleigh ride was great. Ron Slay was in Charlotte. He was in Detroit following the Tennessee basketball team. He didn't have all of his voice, and he has a great voice. He didn't have all of it because of how much he was yelling up in Detroit this past weekend there as a fan and a supporter of UT. So I think if Tennessee fans go back and check out the sleigh ride, which was in the 1 o'clock hour on Tuesday, you can get that anywhere you get your podcasts, on YouTube as well. I think you'll appreciate what Ron Slay had to say about Tennessee's basketball program and the Lady Vols. We talked Lady Vols with Ron Slay.
Josh Ward, follow him on the X at Josh_Ward. Josh, appreciate it as always, man.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, and that will do it for this edition of Locked On Vols here on a Wednesday. Appreciate you guys for making us your first listen, your first watch, downloading, listening to us, subscribing, all that and more for free. It's absolutely free, 30 minutes or less, maybe a couple of minutes more than 30 minutes, but wherever you guys get your podcast, we'll come back. We'll tell you everything and more from spring football practice, latest in Lady Vols head coaching search, what's now, what's new, what's to come for Tennessee basketball now, hitting the roster reset, all that and more coming up on a Thursday Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys, and have a great rest of your Wednesday, everybody.